This episode is exclusively sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim.
Good morning, Tom and Gordon. It's great to see you.
Hey, glad to be here.
Hello, yes. Monsi.
Hello. Hey, we are towards the end of the summer, and we all had hopes that the market conditions for swine producers would be better by now. But it doesn't seem to be the case. So we wanted to talk about market conditions. And to do so, we have invited Steve Meyer, who is the Chief Livestock Economist with Ever.Ag. So, Steve, welcome.
Good to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. So, Steve, at the beginning of the summer, you said costs must fall, demand must improve, and supply must decline for the swine producers to make money. Are we there yet?
Well, I'm gonna paraphrase you just a bit. I've been saying that for about a year, and the real statement is costs must fall, and or demand must improve, and or supplies must decline. Okay, you can take your pick on those. I mean, any one of the three would help. Two of the three would help more, and all three of them would help a lot. But what I haven't been saying is costs must fall by enough, demand must improve by enough, or supplies must decline by enough. And on that count, none of them have changed enough on their own to help.
You know, Steve, your position hasn't changed. I listened back to a recording we did with you, a podcast in May of 23, when this thing was really looking pretty bleak. And at that time, I think we were talking about Gordon, I think it was you had mentioned up around $200 cost of production, and we were getting for a pig, it was anywhere from $140 to $170 a pig. So we're talking about $30 to $60 pig loss. And Steve, at that time, you said this doesn't look like it's going to turn around anytime soon.
Yeah. So well, I don't get many things right, but I got that one right, Tom. So,
you got that one right, yeah.
Unfortunately, right?
So. Yeah. From the producer perspective, Tom and Steve and Monsi, 23 was a memorable year from the standpoint of losses. And Steve, you can benchmark that against other years, right? Bad years. 98 comes to mind. There's other bad years, and the biggest issue was really the cost of production. So yes, Tom, our cost of production on our farms that we monitor and our family farm, we're down in that 160 to 170 per head, right? So Steve, I think you have floated around 86 cents per carcass cut weight cost of production. Mm-hmm. You know, that's an industry number, and you'd say that's the best, I think, Steve, right? That's
among the best, that number has come down. It has come down. That number in my model was 97 last year.
Yeah, right.
And Tom, that May of 23 was about the worst. I mean, those hogs sold in April and May. Boy, they never got a bite of cheap corn, and they were really pricey.
Yep.
From a cost standpoint, they weren't pricey from a sales standpoint, and so therein lies the problem. But costs have improved. I mean, they've come down from that 97. My model now says for this year, Gordon, about 83 or 4.
There you go. Yep, low 80s.
That's significantly better. All right. Now, demand has improved from where it was the first half of 23. Tom. May of 23, we were in a real pickle on demand for the first half of that year. It got better the last half of 23. It's continued to be reasonably good the first half of 24. The problem is we're comparing demand to what it was in 21 and 22, when demand was off the charts good, fueled by several $1 trillion of stimulus payments put in the pocket of consumers. So comparing to that is kind of like comparing me to LeBron James on a basketball court. Okay, it's not a good comparison. And so So that's part of our problem. We have this mental picture of what it was in 21 and 22, and I'm telling you that ain't going to happen again. So demand has gotten better, but not by that kind of margin, and supplies haven't changed at all. All right, so
which is interesting because Steve, our sow numbers are down by what, 200,000 or more?
470,000 since 4 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've taken a slug of sows out of this business, and we haven't changed the number of pigs that are coming
because we've gotten more efficient. We've gotten more efficient.
You darn veterinarians, and the breeding companies are just screwing this up for us.
We may want to give credit to some of the producers too for their part in this.
Yeah, well, there's two things. One is obviously the genetic improvement of the animals, and as we've taken those 400,000 sows out, we were constantly replacing all the sows that we were taking out. The ones that we replaced with females that were better than they were. Okay, they're just and significantly better. And then over that 3 or 4 year period, we also took our labor complement on our sow farms from inferior, way short of what we needed, back up to at least okay. All right. I don't think we're flush on that, but we're good enough that we're not losing a lot of pigs because we didn't have enough help. And so a lot of things have contributed to this, but the point remains that we still have a negative number for this year. To Gordon's point, last year's pro forma profitability in my model was minus $27 per head. That's slightly worse than the disaster of 1998. Right? The caveat is that there was a lot more effective risk management done last year than there was in 1998. We don't have any real way to know how many hogs were hedged or how many hogs exactly have insurance placed at what level. So I can't really make an adjustment on that and give you a number, but I know it's less than minus 27. And I'd say it's probably significantly less, but it's probably still in the high teens. It would be my guess. So it was a disastrous year. This year is better, but not much better. And my forecast for next year, based on the futures market right now, is that next year won't be any better than this year. Now, I think the futures market's a little oversold, and so I think we're going to perform a little better than that. But Tom, to your point, the financial situation here has reached a really high stress level. I mean, we were at NPIC in July, and we heard from the folks at Farm Credit, and they've done this presentation for several years. And their average working capital per sow, and Gordon, the number was somewhere in the low sevens. I think it was $712 per sow. And they consider $600 to be critical. So the average in their system, in their loan portfolio, was just over $100 higher than the critical level for working capital per sow. And so I think we have a number of farms out there that are in very bad shape financially.
From a perspective standpoint, you guys, where would that working capital have been in 21, 22 when we were at our best, when profitability was really high? How high did working capital get? If it's a little over $700 a sow now, wow, where was it at?
I don't have the number, and Gordon, maybe you remember that it was on their chart. I would guess it was north of 800 for sure, and probably near 900. Okay.
Yeah, it's your data, so, but for sure 25 to 30% higher, Tom.
And Steve, to your point, as far as this working capital number, if I remember right, in 1998, this is quite a while ago now, but when that working capital number hit that critical point, that's where sow farms started closing the doors. That's when owners started exiting from some of those businesses.
Yeah, you're correct on that. Now, I will say that 1998 was a completely different world than what we live in today.
Right.
You had a major technological change going on in the business of going from small part-time farms to full-time specialized production, all in, all out production. You had lots of things going on that really drove a huge liquidation in that cadre of small producers. We don't have enough of them to make a difference now. All right. This has to be done by generally large farms. And we've had a few large farms that have failed. We've had 2 massive liquidations by Smithfield Foods But therein lies a lesson for the rest of us in that, from what we understand, Smithfield cut over 100,000 sows and will probably produce as many pigs next year as they did the year before, the year that they started cutting. I don't think they're there this year, but I think they will be next year. I know of another large producer that's cut significant numbers of sows and will still produce more pigs this year than they did the year when they started. And so this is a theme, and therein lies why at NPIC I said, all of you need to take a look at all of your farms. So many of our operations now are multi-farm operations. They have several different pig flows involved in them. And I am sure, I'll bet my retirement on this, they are not all created equal, all right? And so, or at least they're not all performing equal. And we need to take a look at those. It's not good, but there's no reason that we should think that all of our operations have to stay open. And I used the example of Walgreens recently. I mean, a few years ago, Built to Last was the big management book that was out there, okay? And one of the companies that it cited was Walgreens, all right? Well, I would say the title should be Built to Last until 2024 now, because Walgreens has announced that they're going to close about 25% of their stores. And, if Walgreens is that, do you think we're immune to that? So my message was, go back and take a look at all your farms and let's start taking out some of the ones that aren't performing. And then I said, and if you are a producer that has one farm, that's a tough situation. And I feel for you, but
but it could be a change in the model of how they're producing pigs. I mean, we've had that history from '98. Back in that time, we had a lot of small producers that weren't efficient that joined into cooperatives, Gordon, like Pipestone has, and became more efficient through that system. Now, they didn't contract sow numbers necessarily, but there's ways that people can stay in the business if they're not being efficient at what they're doing.
And we've seen a lot of people do that. Now, the thing about that, though, is, Tom, you're hitting on the word again, efficiency. And efficiency is key on the farm. But as we look at it from a market standpoint, you have to account for that efficiency and total output when you start putting it on the market and saying, what price is it going to bring? And therein lies kind of the quandary we're in here. The other quandary is at the financial institution level. I mean, they've got a lot of money loaned out here, and if we start having operations get liquidated, think of what that does to asset valuations all the way through that and all the way through their portfolios. I mean, they're in a pickle too, and we can't get out of this quickly, in my opinion, but I think we can get out of it slowly, and we got to start making some tough decisions on that. I don't think costs are coming down much more, all right? Some, but, Gordon, I'll be really surprised if my model has a 7 on the first digit anytime over the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, I don't think we're going there.
And that's what we need to get to, Steve, in order to really maintain profitability, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I would make that promise, but it darn sure help. Okay.
Right.
Gordon?
Well, I think before we get to the supply issue, we should finish up on demand. Internationally, we're doing good. Internationally, we may break records, Steve. So it's really domestic demand.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Monty?
No, I was just thinking on the demand because I would like to understand better what are the drivers or what can we do about it. And one of the things comes to mind to me this year is also to understand the impact of Prop 12, right, with California. Is that having an effect in the bad way on the demand right now, or could you comment on that?
Yeah, and this is an odd thing because this is a market segregation issue, and so what has happened is California's put a different set of rules in, and it has reduced the amount of product that can go to California. We don't have enough sows, Prop 12 compliant sows, to supply the amount of product that California has taken in the past. And even if we did, the price would be higher there because the cost of producing those animals is higher. So you have a quantity of product that normally would have gone to California, and you still do. At the beginning, it was a bunch. We've gotten that less and less because we've kind of increased Prop 12 compliant production. I think we've got about 2%, maybe 2.5% of national supply that used to go to California that can't go there now. So that's been weighing on the market in the rest of the country. So you have a demand change in California, which is forced on them by a statute that ends up a supply problem in the rest of the country. It's not a disastrous problem, but 2.5% is one of the reasons we haven't seen the kind of rally we've seen this summer on a seasonal basis.
That's really good, Steve. That's important to know.
Yeah. That product had to be disappeared, had to be sold somewhere else. Now, to Gordon's point, exports this year have been good, but not that good. All right. They haven't taken all that product. And exports are going to be record large, I think. Now, yesterday's data on June exports wasn't exactly stellar. It was down 8% from a year ago, and we're only up a short 4% now year to date. Brett Stewart, we work with Brett a lot. He still thinks we're going to be up 9% for the year. We're going to have to hustle now, given where we are right now. So, but it's still good.
Yeah, think about that. You know, we're at close to what is it? What percentage are we going to be at? If we're up 9%, what would be our total export percentage?
26.5 roughly for this year.
Yeah,
that'd be record high.
Yeah, it's over a quarter of our production is going outside of the U.S. So that's amazing.
Exports have been by far the best. Domestic demand is not bad. Okay, it's not what it was in 2022, but I would have to categorize it as good. And in fact, June real per capita expenditures are going to be up 5% from a year ago, right about the 5-year average. So that says maybe more about how bad demand was in June of last year, because it wasn't very good. But still, my point is domestic demand is not bad. Export demand has been excellent. And we still can't get a profit in these hogs because costs are high enough that we can't get over the hump. Then the answer is you have to tighten supplies at some point. And Tom, to your point, we have this tremendous growth in efficiency and that we have to overcome to do that. And I don't see any answer to that other than reducing the sow herd pretty dramatically. And Gordon knows I've been talking about that for a while. Now, the problem is we can't all get together and decide that. That's illegal. Okay. That's called restraint of trade, or you're trying to manipulate supply. So it has to be done individually. It can't be done collectively. And so all I can do is lay out, here are the consequences as if you go on the way you are, and here's what you might be able to change in order to change the consequences, and then leave it up to the producer to decide.
Well, we've talked about this before, and Gordon and Monsi, you know, it's what our jobs are as veterinarians is to improve efficiency on farms through health and productivity, and so that doesn't change. And yet the reality is there is a very wide variation in the U.S. industry today in productivity. And my sense is that's going to be still the splitting point that's going to happen here, is that whether it's working capital or just the reality of I can't compete at the level I'm producing versus what others, that's still going to happen. But in the meantime, our job is to continue to put people to a more efficient level so they can survive. So it's a little bit of a conflict that happens within our industry when we're doing everything we can to become more efficient, where at the same time we're saying, Steve, we need to lose maybe as much as 1 million sows.
Long term, I would put that's the number I would put on the table. Yeah,
so the business activity, Tom, is and maybe this is an economic term or a banker term, Steve, it's asset rationalization. And that fits into your efficiency issue, and it's more of a balance sheet as much as a P&L issue and decision. And it's reasonable for producers to discipline themselves in an asset rationalization discussion and at least think about it. And so I'll speak to our own farm. Randy and I and Seth and our family and Tyler, we have more than one sow farm, so we have the ability to make this decision. We're going to shut down a sow farm this year. We're going to shut that sow farm down because we can still supply the same number of pigs from our other sow farms, But that sow farm will be sunsetted for a wide variety of reasons. Simply, it's the oldest. It has a history of PRRS, and so it's not our best supply. But the main thing is it supplies less than 1,000 pigs a week, so it doesn't fit a long-term flow. And then lastly, from an pure asset rationalization, we can convert it to a wean to finish site, and we can still utilize that asset. So for those reasons, Steve, we're making our decision as a producer. We're sunsetting a sow farm, but I agree with you. Long term, every producer needs to go through an asset rationalization process.
But Gordon, you said you're going to close a sow farm and produce the same number of pigs.
There you go.
Exactly.
So it's not helping in the equation at the end.
So a lot of help you are, Gordon.
Well, but here's the point. Okay, so then let's finish the discussion, Steve. The sows that need to be removed, the million sows that you're talking about, are sows that have those features and attributes that may not fit long term, and that's the hard decision.
Yeah. I agree.
They may, if they constantly break with PRRS, if they're old, if they have a small flow, if they have other diseases, if they have bacterial diseases, if the value of the pigs that they're producing long term and not meet the standard of survival, well, then those sow farms need a serious consideration to be removed from the population.
But let's not forget. I mean, I understand that we're supply is the big issue here that we're now dealing with, but demand is still critical long term, and
sure.
and so whatever.
Well, the point there is, as Tom and Monsi, is we haven't moved the needle on 50 to 52 pounds for Steve, decades.
Exactly.
That's the real problem.
Gordon, consumption is not demand. Consumption is important, but consumption is not demand, because if you can sell 50 pounds for a higher price, that's good. That's stronger demand.
We want that, right?
And we did that for a couple of years in 21 and 22. And we have to remember that income is a variable that drives consumer demand. When incomes went up, it really helped us. I plead guilty. I didn't see that as clearly when it happened as I do retrospectively. I see lots of things clearly looking backwards. I would point out, though, that relative to history, domestic pork demand is stronger now than it has been historically, except for those 2 years. Okay.
Yep.
So even though we're eating the same amount of product, consumers are willing to spend more money on a real deflated basis than they were in the past, meaning demand is stronger. So what drives demand? There's several things. One is consumer incomes. The other one is the price of substitute goods. Another one that is very minor is the price of complement goods. And finally, there's consumer tastes and preferences. And that's the big one. That's the big black box that you're trying to, Gordon and his friends on the pork board and lots of other people are trying to influence consumer tastes and preferences. Now, there are some headwinds on that. The board has done some research, and they're very concerned about tastes and preferences among young consumers, right? So you're going to try to influence those. But that's where advertising and promotion plays its game. Now, a lot of people have said, well, just as soon as beef prices go up, we're going to be okay. Well, no, not really. I think beef prices are going up. I think we're going to start building this cow herd again. And it's there's a little rumblings of it finally. But the substitutability in consumers' minds of pork and beef is not as large as it used to be. That's some research the pork board's done recently as well. So I wouldn't hang my hat on that getting us out of this pickle. It will help. Have you seen do you see a theme here? All these things will help,
Absolutely.
But there's nothing individually that's going to do it.
It's a three-legged stool, like you said, and you said at the beginning of this podcast that we need at least two of them. It's this. If we can get all those things working in the right direction, we can move our way out of this.
But I also got from the discussion with Steve, it's not just a little bit. It's more than what we are doing right now in each of those three legs.
Yeah.
And I know we're running a bit out of time, Steve, but your last take on this recording, what would you like to let the producers know?
Well, I'd like to let the producers know that this is kind of the culmination of a number of factors, and number one is you can't look back and wish things were like they used to be. That's especially true on the demand side. Yeah. They're still pretty good, but you can't look back and wish that into existence. So don't plan on it. I don't think it's going to happen. Second is you can't look back and wish costs were lower, because they're probably not going down. Even if corn and soybean meal goes down, we have other costs that are higher now than they were 3 or 4 years ago, and they're probably not going down very much, if any. So I don't think you can do that. So you have to kind of accept that we're in a higher cost environment. Then you have to say, okay, can we sell this many pigs profitably as an industry? And do I have farms that are not going to be profitable? And if I do, then I need to make a tough decision on that. And so I would say the theme here is, don't expect things to be like they used to be. Accept things like they are and make decisions that put you in the best position to thrive in this new environment.
Steve, thank you so much. This is actually a great recap. And as always, it's great to have you. And we look forward to having you again. And with that, see you next time at the meeting.
Thank you. Good day.
This episode is exclusively sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim. The views, opinions, or positions expressed are those of the speakers and may not reflect those of any other organization.